DeSanto Propane is 4 generations strong as a trustworthy, family-owned business with unmatched customer service. Go online at DeSantoPropane.com for more info or call toll-free at 1-800-752-4574 today. Since 1937, the difference has been DeSanto Propane.
Keith Kaminsky, Bucky good in the ball!
Santel, all the way to the basket, foul, lays it in for 2!
Hello, high school basketball fans. Welcome to a special edition of the Upstate Hoops Podcast here on Tuesday, January 21st. I'm Jim Sinicropi inside the FingerLakes1.com studios with an express special edition of the podcast. Paul Russo's producing. We'll talk to him in a bit about that Lions-Whitman game that he called last Friday night. We'll debut our power rankings, and there were some really big games this past week in the Wayne Finger Lakes that we should be talking about. The Upstate Hoops Podcast and all of our coverage of Wayne Finger Lakes High School basketball is brought to you thanks to the support of Little John and Barbie Orthodontics. Check out Dr. Rod and Dr. Liz online at littlejohnortho.com. Cicino's Pizzeria and Restaurant. Order online at cicinos.com. And DeSanto Propane since 1937. The difference has been DeSanto Propane. So, Martin Luther King Day yesterday. School was off. No game. There actually was a couple games not involving Wayne Finger Lakes teams. No podcast yesterday, normal time. So we're going to get you caught up here quickly on all the action that was the week ahead and our power rankings. Start out with the boys. I mean, there were some really big games this week and some big-time results that we'll be touching on here. Lions traveled to Wayne to take on the Eagles. Wayne won 74-63 on Tuesday night. Wayne pulled away late despite Cam Blankenberg following out with over 2 minutes remaining. For Lions, it was Jameer Johnson with 20 points, Stephen LeBrecq with 13, Contrell Parker had 11, and then Wayne was led by Blankenberg's 29 points and 26 from Aiden Twist. Also on Tuesday night, East Rochester and Gananda renewed their rivalry. Gananda won 62-56 behind 19 points from Hunter Vogt. Gananda improved to 7-3. East Rochester dropped to 8-2. Then on Thursday night, East Rochester got back in the win column with a win over Red Creek, 49-41. The Rams held a 2-point lead with 3:03 remaining in the third quarter, but the Bombers responded, outscoring them 17-7 the rest of the way and get the win in that key Wayne County matchup. Friday night for the boys, huge night. And probably the headline result of the season was Waterloo defeating Wayne in Wayne 60-53. The Eagles suffered their first regular season loss to a New York State opponent since the 2022-23 season. And they lost to Newark back then. And since then, hadn't lost to anybody from New York State until Friday night when the Tigers defeated Wayne to win 5 of their last 6. Their lone loss coming to Geneva in league. Waterloo was led by Cameron Jacobs, who had 28 points. Dylan Caraballo with 13. Wayne had 31 from Cam Blankenberg, but Waterloo was able to hold Aiden Twist to just 7 points. And congratulations to the Tigers on that one. I mean, we had trouble finding a spot where Wayne would drop a game for the rest of the regular season here. And then on Friday night, it happened on their home court as the Tigers improved to 8-3 with the win over Wayne, who falls to 11-1. Also on Friday night, Palmac defeated Newark 49-43. The Red Raiders bounced back from their home loss to Wayne and have won 5 of 7 since. The Reds had their 2-game win streak snapped and dropped to 4-4 in league play. Carter Young had 15 points to lead Palmac. And maybe one of the stories of the season that's starting to take on a little more significance as we now move towards the end of January. With that loss to Wayne, there's one undefeated team in Wayne Finger Lakes boys and girls basketball. And that's the South Seneca Falcons at 12-0 after defeating Dundee Bradford 54-46 in overtime. The Falcons, as I mentioned, the only remaining undefeated team in the Wayne Finger Lakes following Wayne's loss to Waterloo. Meanwhile, this marked Dundee's first loss since December 12th. They were riding a 7-game win streak. Taj Amasano, 12 points. Kenny Halsey, 12 points. And congratulations to the Falcons. They're 12-0. Also trending in the West would be the Honeoye boys, and they defeated Bloomfield 76-50 to improve to 9-1 on Friday night. They're on a 9-game winning streak after losing their season opener. It's the second longest in all the Wayne Finger Lakes. Dylan Washburn had 24 points. Landon Washburn had 20 points for the Bulldogs, and Radion Smith had 17 to lead Bloomfield in the loss. And then also on Friday night, one of the more intriguing matchups of the year so far, Lions traveled to Rushville to take on Marcus Whitman and came out with a 62-46 win. Both teams now 7-4. The Lions bounced back from their loss to Wayne on Tuesday, and the Wildcats dropped their second straight, but without Brody Royston, who remains out with an ankle injury. Jamar Johnson had 26 points in the game. Paul Russo was there on the call with Kyle Evans. And Paul, we expected a tight game, and actually Whitman kind of owns Lions on their home court in recent memory. This game, though, not too close. Brody Royston, a huge loss for Marcus Whitman, obviously. What did you see on Friday night courtside?
Yeah, so it was pretty interesting. Obviously, selfishly, now the hope is becomes we get this rematch in the sectional final.
Yeah.
We'll do a little inside baseball here. Next week's going to be an interesting week because it's midterm week in the area, so we might be doing a little bit more in-depth stuff for sectionals next week here on the podcast. But, now it kind of sets up, I think they're kind of both on the same side of the bracket, but it would be pretty interesting to have them there for sectional final time to rematch, here nor there. It's one of those things where you could kind of tell, I think, where Royston's really missed in a game like that, especially. Just Lions really got out from the jump. It was flag to flag, however you want to call it. And, Whitman made things interesting. There were a couple technicals called, so give some credit here.
Players or coaches?
Players. So give some credit here to Logan Storms, who did not get the start. He'd been dealing with flu and illness all week, and talked to Coach O'Carr before the game. He didn't know really what he'd have in store for the team or the game itself. And Logan went 100% at the line there in the third and fourth quarter to really get Whitman back into it. It was a really great atmosphere, honestly, in the second half between the Lions fans, the Whitman student section. They were kind of both going at it. And just one of those things where ultimately it's weird that they're both independents and yet they only play once. Kind of would be cool to have it be a home and home series regular season, but since
that in the future,
since they're in the same class, we'll, like I said, hopefully get that rematch. But really, honestly, it was a really great game. It's the first time that we've seen both of them in person this year. If there was any doubt, if you want to call it that, with Lions, I don't think it's there or should be there. And with Whitman, kind of the usual, what I would just call Wildcat way of basketball more than anything else.
They can't afford. I mean, Whitman's not a team that can afford to have key cogs in there, especially in the starting lineup, missing when they're all there. I mean, they all play off each other. They're a close-knit group, played together for years. And, when you take Royston out and you have another kid in Storms with the flu, it's disappointing not to see both teams at full strength. But congratulations to the Lions for taking care of business in a place where they really have come in the past as favorites and left with a loss, so maybe they exercise some demons there.
Yeah, and that being said, a couple kids I do want to shout out because you kind of mentioned a little bit. We've mentioned a couple usual suspects, right? And like J.J. Johnson, Logan Storms, and such. Terrica Blue Eye for Marcus Whitman did about as good as a job as he could with J.J. Johnson in the block on defense. Also
Giving up some size there.
Was also tied with the team lead offensively with points. And then I think we're kind of wondering a little bit, who on the line side, like who would replace Mikey Briggs, stuff like that. Contral Parker's really good. Both of the Lebrecks played really well. It's one of those things where, like I said, like on the line side, if there was any doubt, I don't think there is anymore. It's the only question I have is what's it going to be like really for them in B2, but I don't think there's going to be anything there to really trip them up.
Let's get both teams on opposite side of the bracket.
Yeah, that's ultimately what I'm hoping
again
for.
In the Blue Cross.
Yeah, I mean,
epic matchup.
Ultimate rematch, right, would be that whatever would be probably Saturday afternoon or something like that at that point in the weekend.
Yeah, that's great. Before I let you go here, to continue on with the girls' side of things, what do you make of that Waterloo upset of Wayne?
I mean, I didn't expect it. It was interesting because when we did the Geneva Waterloo boys game now, like 10 days ago now, 10 plus days ago, I was kind of wondering a little bit. I thought it would be Geneva maybe threatening a little bit more than Waterloo for Wayne's spot at the top of the standings, should anybody do it. And I still think that's probably maybe overall the case.
We didn't think Waterloo was coming for anywhere near the top of the figure. Preseason.
And now you have a 3-horse race more or less at the top of the standings between Wayne, Waterloo, and Geneva. So now we get the cool part of league play in my mind, which is the whip around games, right? The second games that make it all the better, right? So it's interesting. If you look at the top right now, it'd be Wayne has the tiebreaker on Geneva has the tiebreaker on Waterloo, and Waterloo has the tiebreaker on Wayne. So
that game when Wayne comes to Waterloo, we don't have a date on that, but it's got to be coming up in the next 3 weeks. So that's going to be
makes it all the more important.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Thanks, Paul. Yeah. Let's kick it over to the girls' results for the week, and just got done talking about the Waterloo boys. Waterloo girls with a huge win as well this week, defeating Bloomfield in the Bomber Barn 67-64 on Wednesday night. The Bombers rallied from an 11-point deficit in the third quarter, forcing multiple ties in the fourth. The Tigers had possession in the game with the game knotted at 64 with about 20 seconds left, and Macy Muller banked in a game-winning three-pointer with 4 seconds left. Bloomfield had a chance to force overtime, but Annie Dodge's three-point attempt hit the front of the rim, and Waterloo improved to 6-0 in league play, taking out probably, with the way some of the other teams in the East have kind of not lived up to expectations. Bloomfield was probably their biggest competition coming into the East this year from the West. What a game in Waterloo, 67-64. Macy Miller, 19 points. Gwen Panic, 17. Lily Bauman had 20 to lead Bloomfield. Kayla McCombs had 17. Congratulations, Jayla Bell. That's a name we've been saying on this podcast for, it seems like, forever now. She became the Lions girls' all-time leading scorer, surpassing Janitha Knight's mark of 1,858 points, which was set back in 2001 during the Lions' 60-39 victory over East Rochester. Jayla finished with 18 points, and again, the new all-time leading scorer for Lions girls basketball. Congratulations, Jayla Bell. Thursday night, Dundee Bradford defeated South Seneca 61-33, 26 points from Kendall Parker. Dundee Bradford improves to 9-1. And then Friday night, a pretty big matchup in the East between Newark and Palmyra Macedon. In Palmyra, Newark came out with a 51-46 win. They improved to 7-5, now getting 2 games above 500. Palmyra Macedon fell to 7-4. And also another congratulations in order, this time for Takayla Vaughn. She scored her 1,000th career point on a free throw with just 2.5 seconds remaining, which usually, when you get your 1,000th point in a close game and it's a free throw down the stretch, I guess that makes it a little better. Those free throw probably iced the game for the most part for the Lady Red. She became the 4th Wayne Finger Lakes player to reach the milestone this season, joining Palmac's Taryn Goodness, Bloomfield's Callum McCombs, and from the boys' side, Brody Royston from Marcus Whitman. Tequila finished with 23 points on the game. Karina Natali had 14 points as well in the Reds' win. Also of note on Friday night, the Minders girls have now put together 3 straight wins after losing 6 of their first 8. They defeated Penn Yan in Arthur L. Baker Gymnasium in Seneca Falls 37-33. So Minders now 5-6, Penn Yan 5-7. Bailey Cooper had 13 points for Penn Yan, and Allie Nigro had 14 points to lead Minders and first-year head coach Hannah Brown-Trice. So, with that being said, a day late, here's our power rankings. Start with the boys. Wayne holds on to number 1, Lions number 2. And you look at that, Geneva still ahead of I'm surprised Waterloo did not jump up to at least 3 with that win over Wayne. Of course, Geneva beat Waterloo earlier this year. But there you go. Wayne holds on to number 1 despite losing their first game in a long time. Lions with a big win at Whitman holds on to the 2 spot despite losing to Wayne this week as well. I wasn't sure if maybe we'd see Waterloo even jump ahead of Lions with that win. But they stay at 4. South Seneca, the undefeated South Seneca Falcons, up to number 5. And that is about as high as we've seen the Finger Lakes West team since, maybe going back to, can't remember the year, but the year that Red Jacket and Whitman met in the finals.
I think Bloomfield boys crept up the rankings last year.
Last year?
If I remember
into the
right.
top 5?
They might not have gone to 5, but they were definitely floating at like the 6 and 7 mark.
Well, either way, impressive. And like I said, maybe one of the unsung stories of the season so far is what's going on at the Jack Guinan Gymnasium in Ovid with the South Seneca boy. Now, that South Seneca program, former state championship caliber program. It's been a while. And then the girls had a ton of success on the state level, while the boys program kind of has been in mediocrity for the past 10 to 20 years, but this year maybe something special going on in Ovid. Marcus Whitman with the loss to Lions at 6. Tough to penalize them too much, having Brody Royston out for that one. East Rochester boys, they were as high as 2 or 3 earlier in the year, but they're down to 7 now. Honeoye boys, the other story, just one more loss than the undefeated South Seneca Falcons. Newsflash, they're going to meet this week, I think. I don't know. We'll find out in a second. But they're at 8, Palmac at 9, Dundee, Bradford at 10. And the big thing that I see with this power rankings is the lack of Finger Lakes East teams. Usually the Finger Lakes East dominates the top 6 or 7 spots in the ranking. But, Newark's struggling. Minders boys struggling. Mid Lakes boys, Penn Yan boy. I mean, who are you going to put in there? I mean, we got to wonder. I'm not going to count out Newark or Minders, especially those two, for making sectional runs. We've seen it before where Newark had a rough first half of the season and rebounded and actually went to the state Final Four. But we got to see something soon here as we're almost to February. And Minders boys with the same thing. They're usually playing down in a class compared to the competition in league, and that's had them have where they've had a couple of just above 500 records, but ended up making sectional runs. I think that could happen again too this year. But again, you go on to see these guys start playing better, and that is one of the more unique boys power rankings that you've seen on this podcast in a while. It's just pretty mixed up between teams from all 3 leagues, including independents like Lions and Whitman. So let's see what the girls look like. Of course, Waterloo with that win over Bloomfield stays at 1. The Lions girls, number 2. Jay LaBelle in her as an upperclassman now. You see the whole team playing better. They haven't been able to capture that sectional title yet. This might be the year. Newark girls up to number 3. Still think that they're among the best teams in the Wayne Finger Lakes. And Palmac also at number 3 tied. Of course, Newark just beat Palmac. So if you went by recency bias, maybe Newark would be 3 and Palmac would be 4. But overall, that's how it shook out. Tied for 3rd. Bloomfield, number 5. Bloomfield might be the second best team in the Wayne Finger Lakes, but they lost that game to Waterloo. They come in at 5. Marcus Whitman girls, Liz Royston doing a great job at number 6. Of course, they're in the West along with Dundee Bradford at 7. Gananda out of Wayne County at 8. Clyde at 9. And Penn Yan at 10. Penn Yan wasn't first time they're in the ranking all year, I think, unless they might have snuck in our preseason. I don't remember.
Yeah, I think they were part of that first weekend there for the girls. But yeah, the only true surprise I have, I think, might be, to be fair, Penn Yan, only because lost to Minders. So I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but that's just the way it shook out this week. And it's kind of a conversation we've had, me and you, Jim, with Kyle too, where it's like the bottom of these rankings are. I don't know if there's something beyond fluid at this point to call it, but this kind of is what it is with the kind of state the game is right now across all the leagues and all the teams.
Yeah, I think it's good to see some on both the power rankings, a lot of West and Wayne County representation. So it's good to see. And again, the way I've always looked at this, we've done this for years. We sectional titles are the most important thing. And if you find yourself in the power rankings, you feel you got a shot, a pretty good shot, especially if you're in the upper half of that almost becomes where we'd expect you to be a favorite heading into sectional play. So, with that being said, let's take a quick look at next week, exam week, midterm week, light schedule, a lot of out-of-conference games, highlighted by, on the boys' side tonight, Minders at Wayne. Maybe Minders can, pull an upset too. I mean, that's the type of win Minders needs. They played them tough in Seneca Falls. Now they got to go to Wayne. A tough spot to take on Wayne after losing their first game against the New York State opponent in 2 seasons. But that's tonight. Wednesday night, Whitman at Batavia, Newark at Wilson Magnet. Thursday night, and this is a big one. Maybe the game of the year, maybe the game of the last 5 years in the West. South Seneca at Honeoye. South Seneca undefeated. Honeoye 1 loss. I mean, this is a big game Thursday night in Honeoye.
And to back that up too, the other 2 teams right behind them, Dundee Bradford and Red Jacket, face each other that night too.
Yeah, and Red Jacket's putting together a nice season as well. It's really some good basketball being played in the West. Friday night, Clyde at ER. Geneva at Minders, and Waterloo at Palmac. On the girls' side, tonight you got Waterloo going out of league to take on Pittsford Southern. That'll be a nice test for a team that likes to punch above their weight and prepare for postseason, where they've had incredible success recently. Wednesday night, Bloomfield's at Palmac. Bombers try to bounce back. Palmac could use that win as well. Waterloo at Mid-Lakes Thursday. Clyde at Lions, one of the great local rivalries. Gananda at ER, another. So the 2 biggest rivalries in Wayne County taking place on Thursday night. Friday, Minders at Bloomfield, Mid-Lakes at Newark, and Palmac at Waterloo. Want to talk about rivalries in recent memory. Palmac and Waterloo have had some incredible battles in the past few years. So light week of action, but still some games to note, which means, next week when we come back at our normal time on Monday afternoon to talk about the week that was, there won't be quite as much to discuss. So we figured it'd be a good week to really delve into the sectional classifications, who's in whose class, who's looking good, potential matchups between Wayne Finger Lakes teams. So that'll be a great episode. It'll probably be a little longer than normal, too, because there's a lot of classifications and a lot of teams. We're going to do the boys and the girls side, in addition to our updated power rankings and in addition to the results in the week ahead. So might want to carve out an extra 30 minutes next week for your Upstate Hoops Podcast viewing pleasure. So that's about it for today on the special Tuesday edition of the Upstate Hoops Podcast. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, and TikTok, which actually is it's alive. Wasn't for a while, but now it's back. Subscribe to us on YouTube and our audio-only podcast available most everywhere you enjoy your audio content. You can find our show, live stream games, and local news, weather, and sports 24/7 on the free FingerLakes1.com app. Thanks for joining us. For Paul Russo, I'm Jim Sinicropi. We'll see you next Monday afternoon. Have a great week.